Greetings from New York City. This is Chris Franco, and the person who is the focus of the video we'll watch together, his name is Anthony Pompliano, and he is one of the biggest Bitcoin pumpers that I know of. I've always found something about his online persona to be a little cringy and a little bit disingenuous, and I can hopefully pinpoint what that is by looking at this video that he uploaded on his channel, where he titled it, Pomp Destroys TV Host on Bitcoin. Now,
Wall Street Journal reporting that Blockfi is preparing for a potential bankruptcy.
Blockfi is a company that Pomp was very enthusiastic about because he was part of the team, I think, that invested in one of their rounds. He's had Blockfi affiliate links that he makes money from. So Blockfi has been very lucrative for him in a lot of ways. There's a lot of people out there, and I'm not saying that Pomp is to blame. He was pushing these affiliate links, so plenty of people had assets on their exchanges or on their exchange that they'll probably never see again.
Watched a clip before we did this interview in which you called it a, quote, rocket ship.
Rocket ship!
Get on board, you said.
Get on board!
I am bullish, bullish, bullish.
I am bullish, bullish, bullish.
Isn't that part of the problem? Don't you have any regrets whatsoever for making statements like that and perhaps putting people who are less experienced than you into some of these assets?
I would feel horrible having led people to something that caused destruction for them. But let's see what Pomp had to say.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, you can take anything out of context. I've literally recorded 1,200 podcast episodes, right? You can go back and find all kinds of crazy stuff. But the context you're talking about, I was an investor in the company in a private placement round where accredited investors evaluated.
It's weird, though, because it was a private placement round, but he felt the need to publicly boast about, just how well the company was doing and how, it's a
rocket ship
and all these different things. So if we went out and bought Apple stock, there's really no reason for us to go tell everyone how excited we are that we now own Apple stock, because our enthusiasm is not going to change the performance of the business, which ultimately is going to have the biggest impact on the price or the value of that asset over time. But in the case of Bitcoin or any of these funny money businesses, a lot of it's narrative, a lot of it's enthusiasm until the music stops playing. That's happened kind of recently.
If something happens to a company that I'm an investor in, then we lose money. That is called capitalism. It's called taking risk. And the fact that we now want to take that and somehow spin it or pull it out of context, I think is inappropriate.
Blockfi! Get on board! With over 500 employees now around the world. Rocket ship! Over $15 billion in assets on the platform. $50 million a month. $50 million a month in revenue. Let's roll. They've built an amazing business, obviously, and anytime you can get a who's who at the table of all these investors, something's going right. I am bullish, bullish, bullish.
Instead, what I think we should be talking about is the fact
he's not responding to, I think, a legitimate question like, do you feel any sort of blame for getting people excited about this stuff that they ended up getting wiped out?
This is not about pointing fingers. This is not about that. I think it's mostly about understanding the power that you have with as many Twitter followers as you have, with the captivating voice and articulate way that you describe this asset.
Rocket ship!
In an environment that grew to be highly speculative. You don't think...
I don't get why it's funny, to be totally honest. I don't understand why he's laughing.
That you have the power to influence people to get into certain areas of the market that maybe they shouldn't be in? You don't think that's a fair question to ask?
You can ask whatever questions you want. Scott, CNBC is the most powerful financial network in the world, and people critique CNBC for pumping Bitcoin.
So yeah, we critique him for pumping. He's not going to apologize, and his reason is he says, people say CNBC pumps, and they're not apologizing.
Anyone on CNBC apologizing for that? You talk about an asset. Just because somebody criticizes you for something doesn't mean they're right. And so if you're going to argue that CNBC is not as powerful as me with a single Twitter account.
The other thing I think he's discounting here is his network, if you want to call it that, his newsletter, his Twitter account, his YouTube channel, his network was like a Bitcoin propaganda network versus CNBC, which has to fill airtime and needs to talk about a lot of things that are relevant to their target market. In Pomp's case, his audience was people who were jacked up about the future of Bitcoin. One of the reasons these brands are so enthusiastically giving money to people like him to push their affiliate links is because the audience that they're talking to, that Pomp is talking to, is in the market for this stuff. They're the most susceptible and the most vulnerable because they're the most excited. And his network, everything is just why Bitcoin solves this, or hey, Bitcoin failed us, but this is actually a reason why Bitcoin should be around. And hey, I bought Bitcoin and blew up in my face. And he's like, see, this proves what we've always known, which is we shouldn't judge people by their appearances. We should judge them by the merits of their ideas. And that's what Bitcoin does. Like, everything comes back to Bitcoin. That's
insane. And so ultimately, there's no difference between any of the media platforms, right? I have a media platform.
I just described the big difference, by the way.
There's plenty of people. You've been talking about Bitcoin all day. At the end of the day, people will critique the assets. But the Bitcoiner mantra, dollar cost average, hold a great asset forever. Those are timeless investing principles that Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and many other investors go ahead and look at.
Okay, this is where, and again, not personal. I know I said it at the start, but I know I'm going to kind of flame this guy. And it's deserved, though, because no one's asking him this. To Pomp, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, I'm sure you know, they've said in many different instances over the years, they don't like non-productive assets, that it's not their preferred vehicle to turn money that's worth X amount today into something more in the future. That's not what they believe in. I mean, Charlie Munger, there's a clip of him saying that
civilized people don't buy gold. They invest in productive businesses.
Civilized people don't buy gold. They invest in productive businesses. If you're looking for Warren Buffett's opinion on gold, read the 2011 letter to shareholders that Warren Buffett wrote. You know, it's all in there. The reason is not because they hate gold. It's because it doesn't produce anything, and they see more value in investing in something that produces something, right? Something that can actually give you something back as an investor versus something that's price depends on whether or not people believe that it's of a certain value at a given time, not based on fundamentals, based on their belief that the price is going to go up, right? Because then you'll be able to sell it to someone else who will pay that price and you get a big profit. So to say that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's timeless investment principles are being adhered to by Bitcoiners who are buying and holding Bitcoin, it doesn't make any sense. That is not an accurate statement. They believe in buying and holding great assets, but only assets that are producing something, cash producing assets, not assets that produce nothing. And that's not a dig at Bitcoin or even gold for that matter. But to try to make this sound like what he's been advising people to do is reflecting these timeless investment principles of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, it's flat out dishonest. He either doesn't understand the difference between the two types of assets, which I find hard to believe, or he's just manipulating people. If it's not those two things, then what is it?
Just because the price goes down, again, there are other companies and stocks and assets that go up in
stocks, which are pieces of businesses. The prices do fluctuate, but that is fundamentally a different type of asset than something like Bitcoin or gold.
Down in price. This is how markets work. And so, no, I don't think that CNBC should be criticized for talking about an asset.
And no one's criticizing CNBC, by the way, to my knowledge. They're criticizing Pomp and a few and other people like Pomp. They're not criticizing CNBC. That is not the issue. But again, this is what someone who spins things can do.
What I think we should do is we should encourage more conversation. We should have conversations like this where people who like the asset, who don't like the asset, come together, they discuss it, and then ultimately the free market will decide what happens.
It is undeniable that confidence in this asset class has taken a tremendous hit.
Before we go any further, do you think the confidence has gone down or up in the last 2 weeks? For me, I think personally it's gone down. And I think the price reflects that because the price is a reflection of if people are buying or selling in the case of a non-productive asset like Bitcoin. Now let's see what Pomp thinks.
I don't agree with that.
You don't think confidence has taken a hit? Really?
67% of Bitcoin. Don't listen to anything anyone says. 67% of Bitcoin in circulation has not moved. It's an all-time high. It's never been higher. Bitcoiners are holding. They are not selling this asset. That's what the...
Okay, I would also jump in here and say the things that guys like Pomp have been saying over the last few years. One of the things I should say is, Bitcoin has all this utility. It's the best way to transact at certain things. And I'm not putting those words in his mouth, just generally speaking, though. That stat he throws out here about how, whether he said it earlier or he'll say it later, 67% of Bitcoin has not moved. Well, that implies a lack of utility to me. And meanwhile, while the price has moved down, that implies that the real money has been leaving it. Otherwise, why would the price be going down? And again, maybe I don't know why. Maybe there's some other unconventional reason why that's happening. I think that's the whole problem here is the confidence leaves, the buying pool shrinks, the price goes down. And just like there's a cascade effect when the price goes up and people chase it, people also chase a falling price.
Mainstream media does not understand. Bitcoiners do not care about the price. And you can see it in the data. Bitcoiners do not care about the price. And you can see it in the data. Bitcoiners do not care about the price. And you can see it in the data.
They probably bought it higher and they're not selling it. So they're holding on, in your words, for dear life because they're believers still. They don't want to believe that their investment is not coming back. I mean,
that's not true either because wallet addresses on chain with 0.1 N.01 Bitcoin. This is literally hundreds to a couple $1,000s. The number of wallet addresses on chain continues to hit all-time highs.
What does that mean, though? That doesn't mean anything. And if it does, please explain it.
The people continue to buy Bitcoin. It is available for anyone in the world to audit on-chain data. That is the beauty of Bitcoin. This is not up for opinion. It's not up for debate. There is hard data that you can go on. You can look at yourself. 67% of Bitcoin is not being sold.
If you just listen to what he's saying and you try not to over-intellectualize it, he's not saying anything. Like, the question that he's being challenged on is like, do you feel like you have any responsibility for getting people really excited about this investment space and then giving them very easy portals to get involved in it? And I mean by portals, like he creates doors in the wall, like, hey, you can walk through here and you can access it. You can go over here and access it. And every time you access it through his doors, he gets a chunk of change off you. He makes money off it. So obviously his incentives, he's in a perverse incentive system, because not only does he claim to have most of his net worth in Bitcoin, in which case I would say, I'm sorry to hear that, because you have to be reevaluating that decision unless you're delusional or you're lying, either one. And I think either or is a possibility, to be quite frank. Secondly, if you're making money off people who are coming through and you also believe in your head that if more people buy this stuff and they hold it, that's going to help the price rise and stay where it is and keep going up. If that's what you believe of, you're never going to be able to make a rational rebuttal to what's being asked of you. That's why he's dipping and dodging and being very calculated in kind of his maneuvering here, at least verbally. But what is he saying? He's saying nothing. And that it's really a metaphor for Bitcoin, not as a technology, not as amazing computer science, but for this grand promise of a perfect currency that just fixes all our world problems. It doesn't add up.
And the number of wallets on chain that continue to dollar cost average into this asset is going up. It's hitting all-time highs.
But the price is going down.
You don't think that institutions are going to more closely scrutinize the investments that they make?
What are you laughing at, bro? Like Andre G.
Hey guys, want to see a magic trick? Wow.
Where was I? Let me get back to this.
You don't think the average investor is going to sit at home and think maybe crypto isn't what I thought it was? I'm afraid of losing all my money, despite what Anthony Pompliano suggests I might want to do?
Well, Scott, see, you're conflating two things. You're conflating the centralized equity investments with Bitcoin, which is a
See, again, he's not answering questions. What he needs to do here is just put a confident spin on everything. You're wrong about everything. This is the greatest asset. People don't understand it, and they're the ones that hate on it. But everyone who knows, and I'm one of them, we all are long on this, and it's the best it's ever been. It's the greatest thing ever. It's going to change the world. It's going to solve all our problems, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, they're positioned to have their pockets lined if you end up buying into that. But eventually, someone will be left holding the bag. Clearly, it's taken a hit. The confidence has taken a hit. If you cannot acknowledge that, you are denying reality.
When one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world blows up overnight and fortunes are lost, small fortunes by people who can't afford to lose it are lost.
Right.
One of the largest crypto exchanges in the world blows up overnight and fortunes are lost. Small fortunes by people who can't afford to lose it are lost.
Right.
You don't think that there's going to be more scrutiny on the kinds of investments that are made both by individuals and institutions in the future? And you don't think it's relevant to discuss what restores that confidence in what is still a fledgling asset class with next to no regulations whatsoever?